Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Eugene Stefanov. I'm part of the marketing team at Perficient, and I'm really excited that you've joined us for today's webinar in which we'll discuss Clinical One. Before we move on to a brief overview of Perficient, I'd like to cover some basic housekeeping items. You are welcome to submit questions to the speakers at any time today. They'll be addressed as time allows towards the end of the presentation. If you still have unanswered questions after the webinar, feel free to visit Perficient or Oracle's website, and you can contact the speakers there. I will also drop in their information in the chat box in just a little bit. Please note that today's webinar is being recorded and it will be sent to you within several days. So let's talk a little bit about Perficient. So Perficient is a leading global digital consultancy. We imagine, create, engineer, and run digital transformation solutions to help our clients succeed and exceed customer expectations, outpace the competition, and really grow their business. With strategy and creative and technology capabilities, we really bring big thinking and innovative ideas, along with a really practical approach to help the world's largest enterprise and brands succeed. So we have a large network across the US, as well as nearshore and offshore facilities in India, China, Colombia, Mexico, and Serbia. We were founded in 1997, and we are a publicly traded company on the NASDAQ, and we have a little more than 4,500 employees. We've formed strategic partnerships with many of the major technology vendors, such as Oracle, and we also have dedicated solution industry practices. One of these industry practices is, of course, life sciences. We have relationships with many of the pharma, biotech, medical device, and CROs, including over 30 of the world's largest public life sciences companies. So a little bit about Oracle, and of course, most of you guys are very familiar with the company, so I'm not going to go into detail about the company, but I will share some of their recognition they've received in recent years. Oracle is clearly the powerhouse in the industry when it comes to clinical development and safety solutions. We've been partners with Oracle since the mid-90s, and the partnership is very strong, and we are super excited for today's webinar. At this point, I'd like to turn the call over to today's speaker. We have Mike Grossman, who is the General Manager of Perficient's Life Sciences practice. And we also have Jim Streeter, who is the Global Vice President of Life Sciences Product Strategy at Oracle. I'll stop presenting and pass it over to Mike.
Thanks, Eugene. Really appreciate the intro. Jim, I really want to welcome you to this talk. It's great to see you again. We've known each other for quite a few years, and I thought we would just keep this informal. Let's have a chat about Clinical One, talk about its capabilities, some of the things that are happening at Oracle, and kind of how the uptake is working. But before we do that, Jim, maybe if you could give yourself a little more elaborate introduction, and then we can dive straight in.
Sounds good, Mike. Of course, my name is Jim Streeter. I'm the Global Vice President for Product Strategy here at Oracle. Been with Oracle for a little over 6 years, in the industry for about 23, 24 years. Started off at Pfizer, as a matter of fact, and worked there for about 7, 8 years, and then moved over to PPD and worked with PPD for about 10 years, and then came to Oracle. A lot of what I've been involved with has been basically the e-clinical strategies at all these companies, and implementing all the e-clinical systems from safety all the way through CTMS and data collection, and working with various companies on implementations since I've been in the industry. The one thing I will say with Oracle, it's exciting time to be at Oracle. We're developing new software in the e-clinical space. This is one of the reasons why we're here with Clinical One, and we're really excited because it's a huge investment for Oracle, and Oracle's been investing in life sciences, a lot more investment over the last several years, from everything from the new Clinical One platform to stuff that we're doing in safety and in many other areas within life sciences. But it's it's something that Oracle will continue to invest in and feel that we have, a product that's for clinical trials that needed for today and for the one for the future. So let's go ahead and get started, Mike. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's start with the basics. So what is Clinical One? How is it different from kind of our, the existing applications that we've grown to know over the years?
So Clinical One is basically a rebuild of our applications. We've decided that we needed to restart and create the next generation of software that's needed for running clinical trials. And what that means is we needed to support not only the clinical trials of today, but the ones that are coming for the future, the new data types, the new types of EMR integrations, et cetera. So we decided that we took Clinical One and really created what I call a capability-based application, breaking down the silos between the different what I call functional area systems that have been created, like RTSM, CTMS, EDC, et cetera, and saying, okay, if we break everything down into small apps, which we call capabilities, just like your iPhone, you can put them together and rejoin them together and really change the way that we go to market and decide how you use things. One of the other things I'll say is we've also made it so that it's very open, so that it works with all the systems that you have today, because we know everybody's not going to take that on. The other thing, we've really changed our strategy, and the fact that originally we did all the services in-house, or the majority of the services. We really want to really make it self-service. You don't need to open tickets with us. Once you're up and running in Clinical One, it's just very quick because it is true cloud SaaS software. It really allows you to use that. Our partners, et cetera, we want the partners to really grow and use this application and help us get this out to the market. So we think it's a big difference. It's not what I call the old Oracle. It's a brand new UI. It's on the latest stack, this latest Oracle hosting OCI infrastructure that we have. But it is much different. It's not what you've seen before. A lot of times I refer to it's not your grandfather's Cadillac, right? It is the new and what you would expect from an application today, Mike. Thanks.
Good. Thanks for that. We're gonna now we'll start digging a little deeper here. So Clinical One is a platform. The industry seems to be making a shift to this platform. Certainly over the years, we've seen several attempts at that. Your competitors have claims on platforms, but the big players are all going from individual applications, historic, where we've had the departments, clinical ops, data management, et cetera. And they're starting to look at this platform play. And we know that like ERP and CRM made that transition 5 to 7 years ago, or even 10 years ago for ERP. What is the strategy around platform, and how do we get the industry? Why does the industry, you think, want to uptake this essentially a complete change in the architecture of the approach?
Yeah, it's an important piece. As I talk about capabilities and breaking things down into smaller apps, they need to work together, right? And I think that's the problem we have today is we've created an integration mess, right? We try to integrate all these separate systems. They really don't work together. They cause us to do a lot of duplicate data entry. There's a lot of reconciliation. We try to remerge everything back together in analytics. And when we're able to bring everything into what we call a unified platform, and a truly unified platform, it simplifies things because now the data is shared. It's not integrated. You don't need to integrate these different applications together. They can actually access the data between them. It removes the setup time. If you set up a study, you only need to set up in one place for randomization, for CTMS, for data collection. And that's the strategy behind it, is to simplify things during the setup piece. And then also when you're executing your trials, so that it naturally flows if you're a CRA or if you're a site. So you're not having to log into different systems, so that it's a lot simpler. You're not having to re-enter the screening information for a patient in your RTSM system and in your EDC system. We can do that all in one place. And that's a business process change. And I think that's an exciting time for us, because we really needed to make those changes to simplify things and really give a lot more value than just trying to build a big monolithic system. We can break things down smaller and provide a lot more advantages to the companies that use it.
Okay, I think that's good to appreciate it. So for example, if I have a patient and I put them through randomization, they actually do get randomized and they go into the trial. What's the vision? What happens to that patient, and how does a company interact with Clinical One, assuming they have all the capabilities licensed?
Well, the natural depends on the user and what they're doing, right? For the site user, the randomization, the next screen is the data collection piece. They're not having to log into another system to look at that. When you look at, and so they move through it, and then also their supplies and all that are all part of the same system, so that it looks a lot simpler for the sites. They're not having to go to different systems to see, you know, is the drug here? Do I have that drug for the patient? Do I dispense? You're really working through that from a site's perspective. From a data management point of view, you're not having to take data from the RTSM system, from the EDC system, and bring it in. You're having it all in one place so that it's not duplicated, that everybody is seeing everything in the same place. The same thing for the CRA. As they go through the data, they're not logging into different systems. They're not seeing duplicated data. They're not reconciling things that are different. Even with what I call, you know, RSDV or breaking those down, we don't have to send it over to another system. They see everything in one place. A lot of times I also assimilate this. Instead of everybody working in the queues in different platforms, now they're sitting at a big table and they're all looking at the same thing at the same time. We think that's a lot simpler. We've seen it a lot simpler, not only in the setup, but we're hearing that from the sites. It's so much easier. I don't have to think about different systems and where is data and what's going on. It naturally changes the workflow.
Thanks for that. I think, you know, one of the things that intrigues me is, and certainly something we focus on here at Perficient, is, you know, how does this really change the business? So you talk about, it's clear that the duplicate data entry or the force, you know, sort of the point-to-point integration, that's gone away from a technical side, but is this going to make a dramatic change in the way I'm organized and the way I run my business in data management, clinical operations, you know, et cetera?
Yeah, and it can, right? I think it allows you to work in what we call the mode you have today, but to really take those advantages of, let's say, even the setup piece. You know, you can set up a study in one place. It's the same setup screen that does CTMS, that does RTSM, that does the EDC. So there's a business process change. These groups usually have been siloed before, and now they need to start figuring out how do they work together, because they don't have to reset things up, call visit names, things different. They don't have to worry about that. They can do that all in one place. The same thing when you're monitoring, right? That business process is a lot different because the data manager is seeing the exact same data as the CRA in the same system. And there's a lot of change in that workflow. You can decide to keep them and have the same people doing the same things, but you can start to reduce a lot of the duplicate processes that exist, whether you're cleaning the data, whether you're setting up the study, whether you're monitoring the study. You don't have to do those in multiple places. And those are business process changes. And they're to really take the full advantage of it, you would want to change your business processes, get rid of the duplicate things that are doing, allow people to concentrate on the things that are smart, that are just for the study itself, rather than trying to do these things in multiple places. The other thing that's a big change is the environment that it runs in. When you look at Clinical One, it's up 24/7, 365. And I know we didn't mention, but with true SaaS software and the way Oracle hosts now, we can upgrade the software, and we upgrade on a quarterly basis so that you don't have to bring the system down. You think about that, whether you're site or data management, you're always right now planning for downtime between systems and all these things. That gets removed in this instance, and that's a big process change, right? You're not having to worry about those things. And so there's all these things that add up to, you can take advantage of it, and you can basically reduce all the work that you've had to do today with all these separate siloed systems.
Okay, I think that's pretty exciting. I think changing the overall steady state business process, setting up studies, running studies, potentially ending up even merging departments and getting efficiencies there. That's, you know, that's real money, right? That will take an existing staff, and suddenly, as a company's portfolio increases, it prevents them from having to hire more and more people. And for CROs, I think it's clear in terms of their margins with the impact of having a platform like this. If it's fully implemented, I think could really make a big difference on the business process. You talk about the upgrades. It's kind of a more technical thing, but as we know in life sciences, the whole way cloud software works and the way upgrades works is a little bit more complex than in non-regulated industries. So I understand that the capabilities grow with time and with releases, but how is a company expected to uptake those changes in a controlled and compliant way?
Yeah, and I think that's where there's a couple pieces, right? I mean, Oracle is great at producing the software, getting that out there, and we make it modular, right? When I talk about the capabilities, you can decide what modules you want to take on. If you want to start with our TSM and then do a study with that, and then add on the data collection, and then on the CTMS pieces as we add them on, you can do that. Or you can take small modules from each and use parts of them. But that transition allows you to do that when you're ready to do it. But also we know with the business process changes in those pieces, that's where we rely on partners to do that. Our partner strategy is very important to us. Working with companies like you is what we need, right? These are the business process change people and say, hey, if you can do it the old way and just do them siloed, or if you do them here, you're going to reduce your setup times immensely. You're going to reduce the time to make protocol changes. You can take advantage of that because it's all in one place. And that's what, we work with partners to do that. We work with partners to create what's needed in the software. Now it's really to get that out there and get it available to all the companies to take advantage of it.
Yeah, and we do appreciate that strategy here at Perficient. One of the areas we're focusing on with Clinical One is working with clients to actually put together a business case and really understanding how will the business process change, and then using that on the benefit side of the calculation and seeing how that balances with the cost side of the calculation.
Yep.
So yeah, I think we'll talk a little bit more about the partner strategy in a bit, but can you talk a little bit about your competitors, right? So I think I'm not going to name them by name here. I think most of us know who they are, particularly the ones that are the big ones that are making or claiming to make a platform play. I think why Clinical One, versus some of the competitors out there.
Okay, so when we look at our competitors, what a lot of people have to hear is we did start from scratch. We just didn't take our TSM system. We didn't take our Inform system. We didn't take even our CTMS system. We actually started from scratch, and because you have to redevelop how the data is shared, and when you start getting into capabilities and using microservices to really develop what we call a unified platform, which our competitors say they have. Yeah, they've made the user interface so that they work in flow. We've made the applications in these different capabilities so that they work together and they can flow together. And our competitors are still on the user interface. It may look like it's one system, but they're still separated systems. They're still upgrading them at different times. They're still having to integrate them. They're still having the integration issues, where we've really opened that up with open APIs, and that's a big difference, right? The interoperability or the true unified platform really makes a huge difference in how data comes together. They haven't done that. It's still separate. Even how we've done our hardware and our stack and that IT stuff in the background, so that the system stays up. And when you upgrade, everything gets upgraded at the same time. So you're not having to worry about, is my CTMS system up or is my EDC? When is that going down? Am I going to lose that integration? It's all in the same place to make it really, truly unified, all the way from the hardware. Even the software we develop, we reuse a lot of the services. So like if you're using a data entry screen, the same data entry screen is being used for randomization, the same one for data collection, even the same one for the trial management pieces that we're developing now. Those common services, or what we call common capabilities, are reused over and over again. They aren't separate. So that even in the look and the feel of the software, how they flow together is really truly unified. And I hate the word unified in some ways because it's so overly used, but our competitors really are still creating separate apps and trying to pull them together. They're really still siloed apps that are separate, being pulled and integrated together.
Okay, well, certainly that's harder to do upgrades and releases in that case. So, let's talk a little bit about where we are today. Obviously, you didn't just have nothing and then one day had everything.
Right.
So it's probably something. So just for the people that are listening in, tell us where we are today and how that's going to change in the future.
Okay. So today we have we've done what we call the RTSM, Randomization Trial Supply Management. We've added data collection. You'll hear me use the word data collection. And why I say that is because we've advanced Clinical One so that it's not about data capture, it's about data collection. And data capture is typically data entry at the site. We've built the system so that we can pull data from EHR systems, we can pull data from M health devices, we can bring it from anything that's out there. So that we created even another piece called the Digital Gateway. The Digital Gateway is part of Clinical One. It allows you to pull data and integrate data with any other systems on a two-way basis. So it's a big change in how we do that. So right now, we've done the RTSM, we've done the data collection, which includes the Digital Gateway and M health devices, et cetera. And then we're starting to work right now on the CTMS pieces. So that'll be the next piece that we have in there. In addition, as we look at these things in these common services, right now we're also pulling in the pieces for the study startup pieces that we had from Gobalto. They fell right in line with this, but making those common services so that data isn't duplicated when you use the capabilities from them with ours. And then also, we'll also be expanding those out across the board. We have safety pieces that are being pulled into it. That we're working on some of those now so that if you create an SAE, let's say in the data collection pieces, that SAE and the data about it is available to Argus. So that we start getting the safety one pieces, and I know we're not going to talk about that today, but it allows us to really start to blend so that the data is available, whether you're in the safety side or whether you're in the clinical side, because they do have to communicate, and we want to simplify those processes. So a lot of investment going into those, and you'll see over the next 3 or 4 years, all the clinical applications that we have eventually will be merged into Clinical One so that it's all in one place, and it really is our direction to complete this. But we hope to have CTMS done in about 12 to 18 months. We're just finishing up the data collection today.
Okay, great, and it's really exciting to see the data collection capabilities. I think that's great. We've really been looking forward to it. If I'm a large company and I'm pretty much an Oracle shop and I've got Argus and Inform and CTMS and things like that, why shouldn't I wait? Why should I start exploring and how should I start exploring Clinical One now and start uptaking it and getting some of that business benefit now, but yet still continue to use my existing applications? Obviously, change is hard. Oracle doesn't want everyone to wait 4 years. That's very clear. And I think that the only way that it would be justifiable to pick it up early is to start seeing some business benefit today, and then growing with the platform. So you want to talk a little bit about, for people that have all these Oracle that have CTMS and have Inform, have Argus, even DMW, things like that. What do you see the evolution in the roadmap for those customers?
Yeah, what we want to do is, for Oracle customers, we want them to start to try a new study today, start to do that so that you can get used to this new validation experience because we're releasing on a quarterly basis. We can start to build the integrations that go along with it, whether that's a partner building it or we're helping. We want you to start to build it so that you can take advantage of those, because we're also hearing these new requirements for decentralized trials and other pieces. And that's what Clinical One really enables, so that, yes, you can start small, maybe start with an RTSM study, maybe start with a data collection study, and start to add the other things on so that you're not having to wait for a big bang approach. We've built it so that if you want to do the big bang, you can, but we've really made it so that you can take on the pieces as you want. So that makes it a lot easier to transition into. It's all with open APIs, so it'll integrate with all the existing systems you have today. Whether those are Oracle systems or whether those are, some of our competitor systems. We haven't made it so that you just have to have Oracle, but of course there's a lot of advantages, which we talked about earlier. But the open APIs and the way everything works together with RESTful APIs, it makes it a lot easier for us to integrate with the current systems that you have today. so that you can start to adopt and take those on so that you're not waiting 3 or 4 years. The other thing is the validation piece, and I know we'll talk about that a little bit later, but the validation piece, we've made it a lot simpler to take these on from a quarterly basis. We now come with a validation pack, but those things we've thought through so that you can take them on as you need them and as you're ready for them. And hopefully, you can work with partners to accelerate that and make it a lot easier to take on clinical one.
Well, why don't we talk a little bit about validation since you did bring it up? I think let's get a little more specific. So you talked about validation packs, you talked about quarterly releases. So let's say I've adopted RTSM and data collection, and I'm running a trial, and everybody's trained up, everybody knows how to use the system, and the new capabilities come out. What happens next? Okay, is it just, do they just appear one day and then in production, or how does that actually work?
So that's part of the thing about building a unified platform, right? And it goes back to that, is we've actually built this so that when new capabilities come out, the defaulted is turned off, okay? So that you can decide whether you want to turn them on for your current studies or just for new studies, or you can do them all. It's up to you. And when they come out, but they are turned off so that you don't affect the current studies that you're running today. The validation pack that comes with it, it's a continuous validation pack. We retest everything on every release from the beginning. A full revalidation of everything is put in there. It has everything that you need, traceability matrix. It has basically all the test cases that we've run, the evidence to support that. It is everything that comes out for every release is now available to you. So you don't have to rerun all that stuff, that you get a copy of that, so that you can do that yourself and work with a partner, for your validation plan and pieces like that this would feed. But what we're hoping is that you might do, a couple things to test in a UAT environment, but you don't have to do the whole big bang approach. Even the system's available a couple weeks before the release. We provide the validation pack a couple weeks before, so that everything is available to you. But we're trying to simplify the validation. We know you can't wait 6 months for a validation. We want you to be able to take on validation on the quarterly basis because we release on a quarterly basis. Things are turned off so that you don't have to take on those new things when they come out. But it's really simplifying it so that you can validate it in a couple of days instead of a couple of months, and write up that validation plan and test anything that you may need to test as it's released, if there's something specific that you want on your studies to make sure everything is running fine. But we do automate all of our testing. We rerun everything from beginning to end for every release. Then we apply the results and everything on every release, so that it's a whole cumulative release by release validation.
Okay, so it sounds like you're supplying essentially the operational qualification, or the OQ, with evidence and things like that, which is great. I mean, that's fantastic that's not an extra thing, that's just part of it. But I would think most companies still have to do some sort of performance qualification, UAT, and they probably need to do some level of regression testing just to make sure that no bugs slip through before they, even though they may not be accepting the new features, they got to make sure it doesn't introduce new instability. So do you actually release in a UAT environment sometime before you release in production, or does it all kind of go out together?
Yep. Approximately 2 weeks before the release, we have a UAT environment that every customer that works within Clinical One gets access to. They have there's a base study that's in there, and they also have an area where they can set up their own UAT type study, where a partner can set that up and run that testing for them. But yes, that's all available several weeks before the release. The release notes are available, the validation pack is made available, so that you have that couple of weeks to do that small amount of regression testing that you need to feel confident with that. And we knew that companies would want that, but we feel that with what we're giving you with that OQ piece, that's a small amount of work rather than a large, 3 to 6 month validation that you've seen with EDC systems in the past.
Yeah, well, those are the much more difficult, and I think having the OQ pack with the evidence is a huge step forward. I think obviously if people have extended the system and put in integrations and things like that, you can't test that, so that needs to be tested by the client or a group of customers that actually are using that integration. So there definitely is a multi-step process to keep everything compliant. So appreciate that feedback.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've heard about safety one before, and I think you mentioned it a few minutes ago. And of course, we're talking about clinical one. So what's the difference? Why are they two separate things? And kind of tell us a little bit about the strategy around two brands or two branded applications and whether they truly are separate.
Yeah, they really are separate. From a foundation point of view, we're building this all on the same platform. If you want to call it the one platform, you could call it that, right? We started with Clinical One because we started with the Clinical One apps. We also have the safety team, the development team, building new capabilities around Argus through Safety One, and they're all in the same place, which gives us some advantage. And I talked about one SAE where you could have an SAE. It doesn't have to be sent to Argus. Argus now has access to it through the Safety One capabilities that are being developed. So we don't have to duplicate that data. It's all available in one place. And that's what we're working on now, is how do we develop that and make that work, because it truly is one platform. We just call it Safety One and Clinical One because of the user groups, right? Different users, just want to concentrate on the capabilities that are for safety, and the other group wants to concentrate on the clinical trial specific places. So it's really more of a naming and a marketing piece to help people understand what they're looking at for the different capabilities they want to use.
Okay, I mean, I think that's good. So let's talk a little bit about maybe houses that aren't all Oracle. And I know that's a hard concept for you, but why anyone would do that. But we really, there are a few companies out there that perhaps are not Oracle shops, or historically they're using different data capture, or they're using a different CTMS system. And how do you expect them to integrate and essentially justify a move to Clinical One?
Yeah, let's start with the integration piece. I think the integration piece, because we've built this digital gateway, which allows us to use RESTful APIs within Clinical One. We made it so that you can set that up yourself, right? Partners can set it up. It can be configured by partners, can be configured by the pharma companies or the CROs that use this, so that they can integrate with these existing systems. We know not everybody is using all Oracle stack in many parts of the industry. It's what we'd like to do, and we think there's a lot of advantages to it, but Oracle has always been open. We want it to be able to work with everything else that's out there, and I think that's a differentiator for us. Now, what we are trying to do is make it very simple for you to do that, so that it's not complex, it's not hard to integrate. And we've already done integrations with some of our competitors. I'll mention names, whether that's Medidata, whether that's Viva. Those integrations have already had to been done for Clinical One in certain aspects, whether it's been in our TSM or even now with data collection. We've already required to do that, and it's very simple with the digital gateway. And that's that adoption piece, and makes it a lot simpler to be able to use with the current studies they have or new studies, so they can start to try, let's say, the RTSM with Rave. They can start to try the data collection, let's say, with other things like Viva eTMF or something like that. Hate to mention the competitors, but we know they're out there, and we've made Clinical One so that you can integrate with these much simpler. A lot of things, those integrations can be configured by you. They're not very complex, and it makes that transition a lot easier for that. And we feel, by taking on certain pieces, there are it makes it a lot easier for you to start, saving costs. Our setup costs or timelines for like RTSM are around 21 days. We've gotten the data collection things down. Now, we can get the data collection set up in about 3.5 weeks. But then, there's testing, but then those things can be done, in conjunction with that. But it makes it a lot easier so that you can get a study out in 6 to 7 weeks with the data collection pieces, and work with the current systems that you have today. So we've thought through that. We spent a lot of time. We're now building in pieces so that we can ingest libraries from other systems, like from our competitor systems, from a data collection point of view. And we made it a lot simpler to do with the way you can ingest with APIs in Clinical One.
Yeah, and certainly partners like Perficient are really focusing on the integration piece and looking at connectors for the main competitors. I mean, that's a role that we play, and we know other systems integrators are also looking at that space as well. to make that as smooth as possible, because we do realize the difficulty that you have at Oracle in even getting access to competitors' interfaces sometimes, and
Correct.
that's you'd almost need like a neutral third party to build some of that connectivity. So I think that's an area where we certainly play a role. So appreciate that. So just a couple more questions, I think, as we kind of move through this. So I've already got one of these, right? I have clinical operations. It's running CTMS. I'm running Inform EDC or Medidata or whatever. I've got some kind of IVR system and randomization system. What's my roadmap? When do I jump? Why don't I just sit back and wait? And what's the incentive?
Well, I think the first thing I'm going to say is I think you should start now, whether that's with an RTSM or a data collection study. The one thing I'm going to tell you right off the bat, the user interface has been built for the newer generations that are in the workforce today, right? They want something new. They want it simpler. They want less clicks. They want less issues in collecting the data. And even that time frame to get a study up and running, it's not the 12 to 14 weeks anymore, right? Things are half of that now, or even more. I mean, an RTSM study could take 6 to 8 weeks. We're saying 3 weeks to get that set up and out and running. So you can get patients recruiting faster. You can get your sites happier with a new UI. It just makes your life a lot simpler, and you're not worrying about these integration paths and pieces like that. And when is the system going to be down? It removes a lot of the headaches while you're running the trial. You have new capabilities that allow you to get the new types of data. You may be saying, all right, well, how do I collect this data if now this patient's going to be remote? Clinical One has that built in with the digital gateway, and those are the things that it's things that may be holding you back are now naturally part of the system. And also, what I'll add the thing on is when we work with partners like you, there's new innovative things that you might want to do. And with these open APIs and the way we built it so that partners can build add-ons that may be specific for your program or your therapeutic area, and simply become part of Clinical One, can integrate well, can share that data. You can now concentrate on innovation things and getting things out to market a lot quicker. So there's a lot of things. I know that's just touching on them, but those are some of the major ones that I would say right away is why somebody from ClinOps would start considering that. They should really see the difference on how much less issues. Another one I'll bring up, and I should have brought it up, is mid-study updates. The way that Clinical One's been built, they can be done in minutes. I know that they're depending on how big they are, but it allows you to control them and drag and drop. It's not hard. If you need to make a simple change, you can get it out there in half an hour, an hour. If it's more complex, you can do it and set it up, and it allows you to migrate that to the sites that are ready for those changes. So it's a big part of what we've done and why we think the ClinOps people should really be looking at this, whether they try it with an RTSM, whether they start with the data collection. Very easy for them to try this and start using it now because the advantages are really big with them.
Yeah, and I'm pretty excited about it. I mean, I think both the integration and the business process change, and now that data collection is there, I think it's not just replacing a randomization system. We're starting to see some of the true business benefit of sort of collapsing some of these functions together, and really to go through and create a strong business case that has a return on investment, keeping in mind the roadmap that today with data collection, RTSM, there's probably a business case just for that. But when you start adding in CTMS and things like that, the business case becomes stronger. And then the uptake is going to take a year or 2 years before it's full-blown production. From the integration standpoint, we're super excited about having that open flexibility. If we decide to build, just make an AI engine for discrepancy management resolution or something like that, that might not be something. Now that I've said it, you guys are going to go build it. But it lets customers essentially what was a fairly closed environment before really do some of this experimentation and really look to kind of leapfrog to the next stage. So maybe if you could talk a little bit more about the partner strategy. Obviously, that's something Perficient is interested in, but Oracle is a software company primarily. It's software as a service, and it's all in the Oracle Cloud. But the experience that a customer is going to have is going to be far beyond just a piece of software.
And we've taken a different approach. I think we started to touch on this earlier. We still will have customers who want us to build studies, but we don't see that as the large amount of studies. We really want the partners. We really want to get this out there and have partners and CROs and everything building studies. Yes, we'll do a small amount. We need to even ensure we understand what's going on in the industry. But we really want this enabled so that once basically you sign up for the system, you're adding your studies, you're working with your partners, and it's fully partnered enabled. You don't need to come back to us, whether that's for integrations, whether that's for setting up your dictionaries or setting up your study. It's all hands off. And I know that sounds like we're just saying here's the software and good luck, but no, we're going to enable partners. We're going to start training them. Companies like yours, Mike. We're starting training seminars and all these things. We have built all that over the last 6 to 8 months, both with the RTSM and the data collection pieces, so that these partners will be ready and are ready for you to use these systems. And I think that's a big part of our approach. We really want to get these partners up and running. We feel that's the way that we can get this out so that the whole industry can take advantage of using Clinical One for these. And again, it's like you mentioned before, we'll be expanding out to the trial management pieces. There become more and more pieces, and the partners are a big part of our approach to this and getting you to use these and helping our customers to get enabled on them.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. And certainly, we've been partners with Oracle, and in particular the Health Sciences Group, for a very long time, and we know a lot of the players. We do appreciate the openness in the system, and certainly we have sandboxes to work in. We can work with potential customers and kind of give them access, help them build business cases, and business cases based on the release roadmap, not just what's it going to be 5 years from now, but 6 months from now, 1 year from now, 2 years from now. As this evolution happens to platform services, the benefits can be achieved, can be realized sooner rather than later. And I think that companies that wait will be a little behind the 8 ball if they wait 2, 3 years for the platform play. So we're excited about it. We like to enable the integrations. We'd love to just get people to try it out before they buy, and just talk to them about it. Does this make sense for you as a customer? Does it not make sense for you as a customer? And really act as the customer advocate and really have as balanced a view as possible. So I think that's it for the general interview. And I'm not sure, Eugene, if we've gotten any questions over the last few minutes or not, but I think we could just open up the forum now and see what's out there. Oh, you're on mute.
You're muted, Eugene.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
As a reminder, if you have questions, feel free to submit them via the chat feature. Actually, submit them via the questions feature, and we'll get to them as we go along. So I'm not going to ask these in the exact order that they were presented, but we'll try to get through as many as we can. So, and then I'm going to rephrase this question just a little bit. With the introduction of Clinical One, it seems like, lovers of Inform might be disappointed, right? Folks that site staff and so forth that really have grown to love Inform. So what are your thoughts on that? What would the answer be to someone who maybe really likes Inform, and now with the introduction of Clinical One, what would you tell them?
What I would say, for an Inform site user is you're going to find some similarity with Inform in the look and the feel, but it's a lot less clicks to do your job. Everything is in one place. There's only 3 screens you're actually using in Clinical One. You're not going from screen to screen or pop-ups. Everything is done in 3 screens. And in addition to that, everything is in one place. When you hover on things, messages come up. There's hints that are built in. You can kind of see everything on the right-hand side of the screen. We've made it so that it's a lot less demanding to understand what's going on. You see the whole picture in one place. And I think from a site's perspective, and we've worked with sites to create these screens, we've gone out, we've reviewed them with sites, they're going to be a lot more excited to use something like Clinical One, because that user interface has been built not just for the data management, it's also been built for the end user at the sites to make it a lot simpler to do their job.
Awesome, thank you. So, and I think you might have answered this in your beginning, but in the long term, what is the plan with Oracle CTMS and Argus? Will these applications be retired?
Whenever somebody says retire, even when I retire, am I really going to be retired? We're always going to end up supporting studies. I've got Oracle clinical studies that have been running for years. But we do want to have a transition. To people to come to the clinical one. We're going to still support all the trials they run in there. We're going to keep the regulatory pieces going, keep the stack upgraded and pieces like that. But at some point we do want companies, because we're only going to be putting new capabilities into the new system. That isn't today, but let's say with Inform, we could see in the next 24 months we decide, okay, in 24 months that we're going to stop putting new features in there, because it's a lot more advantageous for somebody to use it in clinical one, because the data is shared. Argus is a little bit further off. We're still going to be using core Argus and building apps with clinical one around it. But over some period of time, whether that's 5 years, 7 years, Argus will become part of that clinical one piece. But it's a long ways off. But Inform's probably in the next 24 months. We'll ask customers when are they ready to stop starting new studies in Inform and really move to clinical one. And we really want to work with partners to make that transition a lot faster. We know some companies, the bigger pharma, it's going to take longer. For the smaller pharma, hopefully in the mid-sized pharma, they can make those transitions a lot faster. And hopefully the tools and the business cases and the things that partners will build will help to speed that up, because we do have to make determinations of when do we stop putting new features into that. And a lot of the things with these older systems, let's say Inform, they weren't built for the data types that we need to collect today. But clinical one is, and I think we really want to help companies move forward, not only with these new types of let's say drug discovery pieces that are coming through, but have the technology so they can speed these clinical trials up faster and really have access to patient data directly and things like that. That clinical one has been built for. And the same thing with safety pieces. Those two, it does start to merge together. I will say safety is a little further out. We don't really have as much timelines on those, but it definitely with the Inform and the pieces for CTMS, there will be time periods over the next 2 to 5 years where we will stop putting new features into those, but we'll support them for the lengths of the trials that are already running in them. So.
Great, thank you. So I typically avoid this question when it gets asked on webinars, but I think it makes sense here. So what is the pricing model?
Okay. Yeah, the pricing model is a lot different for clinical one. We have different ways to price it, but we made it simpler. We have a basic model which has RTSM or data collection only. We have a plus model that has both. And the way we price it it's much different. I'm not going to give you numbers here, but basically we price it on the number of patients that are in the trial. There's a base set, and then there's above the base set. So it's a lot simpler. That means that we can do phase 1 trials. We have a lot simpler, a lot more nimbler pricing for it. It also allows us to do very large trials at a lower cost. I think what most customers are finding that clinical one provides a significant savings compared to the products that you're using today, and it's extremely competitive, especially even with the smaller companies. I will say, there's a lot of small niche providers out there that have been able to do phase 1 studies at a very low cost. Now with the pricing model we have, we can compete in those, and we can, so that you don't have to go out and have a separate system for phase 1 as you do for phase 2, 3, and even for late phase. We've made that pricing a lot simpler. We've done a lot by pricing by the number of subjects, but we've simplified it so that it's not like you're having to add large amounts of cost to it. It allows it to be a lot more competitive and a lot simpler for you on that. We're working right now even on one to change the pricing for long-term follow-up studies so that you're paying a much reduced cost once you get into long-term follow-up for the system. And part of this is the technology and the application change. It's a lot, we can run long-term follow-up studies for a much lower cost now internally, which we want to pass on to customers, right? And I think that's a two-way thing. As we get better at technology, not only from the capabilities, but how we host it and the charging of it, we can simplify that for our customers moving forward. Definitely reach out to to you, to get more pricing, or even to our sales force who can help with understand the details of the purchase so you can see in action.
Yeah, and certainly Perficient will be happy to get you work alongside the Oracle sales team, because from my point of view, it's about the return on your investment and the journey, really the journey through the evolution of the platform. So we talked about the benefit side of the equation. We have to balance that against the cost side of the equation, and that's something that we really feel that in terms of advising our customers, that you have to be able to look at it on paper and say, yeah, this makes sense as a company. This isn't just a pure exploratory thing. There's real financial reasons, to move this way.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Next question: will data be collected, cleaned, and then stored long-term in Clinical One? I.e., could it become the data warehouse?
So today it's Inform Plus is what I would say. Okay, data can be collected, can be stored in there from a study to study basis from there. We are over the next several years bringing the DMW, our data management warehouse functionality and capabilities, into Clinical One. I can't give you a timeline on that, but we're working on that today. Clinical One does already integrate with DMW that we have today, so that you can store it in a warehouse for long term. You can also use Clinical One to send it to an existing warehouse or a partner warehouse that has been built, whether that's LSH or whether it's something else. We've built Clinical One so that you can do that. So that functionality and capability already exists with Clinical One. But our long-term goal is to allow DMW or data management type functionality to become part of Clinical One that's typically used for warehouse pieces, so that you can use that in your day-to-day and have that long-term storage. So yes, we're working on that. We don't have all those features, but we can use the existing warehousing pieces, because Clinical One can attach to them very quickly, whether that's a warehouse or data lake, et cetera.
Great, thank you. Can you shed some light on the reporting engine in Clinical One? Is it from Oracle Stack or a third party?
So we've actually allowed for everything, and I shouldn't say that, but we've built in reporting and analytics into where you are within the application. Those are for how you do your job, right? When you're in there and you need to look at how this is going or how that's going, and you're in a subject, we've built in analytics and reports within that. Secondly, we've also now added on a data hub that allows you to have ad hoc reporting, whether that's operational or patient data. And that data hub uses, right now we've set on top of that Oracle Cloud Analytics, which you can do those things with, whether you want to have a partner configure that or whether you want to have somebody else. At the same time, we've built that data hub so that that data can also be attached to other analytics tools that are out there. So that if you want to use an existing analytics tool, you can also attach it to that. Or secondly, you can use the APIs, because it's an open APIs, to pull the data from Clinical One. So we know that companies aren't going to use Oracle tools for all things. We know there's smaller and mid-sized companies who really just want to have the tools that come with Clinical One, use the Oracle Cloud Analytics because it's already part of that. But other companies have already invested in other tools or work with partners who provide tools that basically we've allowed that so that it's already in the system. Every piece of data that's within Clinical One is available through the APIs. It's not like the older systems where we had to start adding APIs on and you couldn't get all of this data or some of that data. Everything from the patient data to the operational data. There's security in front of it to make sure you're only allowing access to the right, right applications that you have. But we have opened that up so that any type of analytics tool can be used, or you can use Oracle Cloud Analytics.
Great, thank you. So how can I get a demo of Clinical One?
Well, what I would say is you can work with Perficient, somebody from your team, Mike, and we can work with our sales and we can get a demo set up for you very, very quickly. So.
Awesome. So we have time for one more question. Go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
Just I was going to say on the Perficient side, we've got access to essentially sandboxes and we're working closely with Oracle on that. So yes, a demo, but I think there's something a little bit of a try before you buy, which is the next step after a demo. It's one thing to see a demo because things generally work in a demo. It's another thing to actually get a little hands-on, and we've got some jump starts and some workshops and things that we could do at little or no cost to get you a deeper dive into some of the Clinical One functionality, so that you have confidence in any decisions that you might be making.
Great.
Okay, great. So I know we have a couple more questions, but I think we'll stop there so I can share the next slide. I'm going to share my screen. Let me go ahead and present. 1 second. Do you guys see my screen right now?
We do.
Yes, just got to go to presentation mode.
Yep.
Great.
So right now, this is a good time to actually introduce our next webinar, which is going to take place on November 5th. This is where Kaz Halsey from Perficient and David Shuford will actually give a demonstration and discuss the roadmap for Clinical One. So that goes nicely with the last question that we actually had. So feel free to visit the Perficient website and register. And I will also drop in a link as well in the chat box in a minute. So at this point, I really want to thank everybody for joining today's webinar. I want to thank Jim and Mike for taking the time to discuss Clinical One. We're super excited about the solution and the partnership that's very strong and many years going. And again, thank you for everyone for joining today, and we look forward to having you join the next webinar on November 5th. Thank you so much, everyone.
All right, thanks, Eugene. And Jim, a special thanks. Thanks for answering all these questions. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Mike. It was good. Enjoy the chat. Thanks.
All right, great. Bye-bye.
Bye.